Good evening, I'm Lee Jordan, here in London at one of the city's most beautiful and well-known spots, the Jewel of Parliament on the River Thames, Big Ben standing by. We're here to mark the arrival of Diana, a Celebration at the Western Reserve Historical Society. News Channel 5 is proud to be a sponsor. In the next half hour, we're going to take you on an extraordinary journey into a world that was uniquely Diana's own. And we begin where she began, about an hour north of London at her family's ancestral home, Althorp.
When I drive through the gates here, it's so private and it's so quiet. It's like arriving in a different century.
The Spencers have called Althorp home for 500 years. But Princess Diana's ancestors weren't noble, they were sheep farmers. In fact, sheep still graze on the estate's 12,000 acres of farmland. This is so serene.
It's very, very English setting. I mean, this is a classical piece of English parkland, and the house's real name is Althorp Park. It's not Althorp Hall or whatever. And the idea was that you were living, the house was almost like it was dropped into the countryside, so there was no formal garden in the olden days. They just wanted, and they used to have little boys from the village would be employed with sticks to keep the cattle from licking the windows.
So coming home to Althorp feels obviously very good to you.
It does. It's I have a sort of spiritual connection with the place, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. And I suppose the fact that you've had your family living here for century after century, you feel more than it's home, that it's just home. It's where you belong.
Before she belonged to the world, Diana Frances Spencer belonged to the quiet English countryside of Althorp. The Spencers were much like any other family. The children played, teased each other, and ultimately grew to cherish one another.
I do remember the wedding day, and I went to see Diana just before she left for St. Paul's Cathedral. And I have to say, as a teenage younger brother, it was the first time I realised that I had a beautiful sister. She'd been made up really beautifully, and she looked great, and she looked nervous, but really, you know, unlike the sister I'd grown up with, she was suddenly a beautiful woman. And then I remember after the service thinking, well, that's fine, we'll all go back to ordinary life here. And I don't know when there was last a Princess of Wales, so nobody had any idea that she was going to become this global superstar. But it happened very quickly. I think people were captivated by the wedding and by this sort of fairy tale story, and by Diana's incredible charm and her gift for people. So she quickly became a global superstar.
When Lady Diana Spencer stepped out of her royal carriage, more than 800 million people around the world caught their breath as they glimpsed for the first time the bride in the dress that had become the most closely guarded secret in fashion history.
The whole experience was just such a life-changing event for us.
For Elizabeth Emanuel, that life-changing event had begun 5 months earlier with a phone call, bringing news beyond a young designer's wildest dreams.
And I was in a fitting at the time, and the phone kept ringing and nobody would pick it up. And I was probably a bit stressed out anyway with the fitting and everything, and picked up the phone. And it was Diana herself, and the fact that she called us up and said, would you do me the honour of making my wedding dress?
Diana chose the basis for her design off the rack in the Emanuel studio. And during the months that the wedding dress for a princess was coming together, everyone wanted to know what it would look like. So the Emanuels designed elaborate subterfuge to safeguard their work.
All the windows in the end had blinds on, so nobody could look in. We used to leave false trails of threads outside because, you know, there'd be newspaper people going through all the rubbish bins looking for scraps of fabric, so we used to leave like different coloured threads and wrong coloured fabrics and just to throw them off the trail.
And no one could have imagined the details of the dress that would earn it a place in history.
The fabric was made specially for us, using the silk from British silkworms, as much as we could squeeze out of them anyway. And the lace was specially made for us, and it was made to match the little piece of Queen Mary's lace that we had from the Royal School of Needlework. Every bit was specially made. It would be impossible to duplicate.
By the time the royal wedding day arrived, Diana had rehearsed walking with the heavy 25-foot train, the longest in royal history. Elizabeth Emanuel helped dress the bride that July morning and recalls an atmosphere filled with joy.
There was a great atmosphere there because all the bridesmaids were there. We had the TV on. We could hear all the people outside making a noise, screaming, and had the TV on as well, so it was kind of stereo effect. And Diana was in a great mood, and she was singing, and the girls were drinking orange juice and cookies, and you know, it was fantastic. It was really quite fun because we could hear them speculating on the TV, you know, what's she going to look like, what's the dress like, and of course we all knew, so it was really good fun.
Of all the unforgettable images captured on the royal wedding day, this one, featured in Elizabeth's book about the experience, stands out.
It's as she was walking up the steps to St. Paul's and the wind had caught her veil, and she just looked so beautiful, like a butterfly. That's of the whole wedding, that was my favourite shot.
Pictures now for the history books and our memories of the Princess Bride.